There are three main types of ducted air conditioning system in Australia, which start at standard cycling, digital scroll or inverter driven compressors. Now I'm here today to take you through all three and show you the pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages of each particular one, and a short spiel I guess on how each one of them works. Now we'll start off with the inverter, because it's I guess the one's in front of me. This unit's a Ducted, but pretty much all the Japanese inverters will look very similar and they all work on the same principle. So I'll take you through this one. Now an inverter unit will speed up and slow down the compressor to match the heat load of the room. That's basically in a nutshell how it works. What happens is 240 volts power comes into the unit. The power gets cleaned up through the noise filter boards, then gets turned into DC power through the power board, then back through to AC 3-phase, and then our control board will actually alter the frequency that 3-phase power comes out, which will make this compressor speed up and slow down. The idea behind an inverter is that it will run flat out to get the room down to temperature. Then when the room is at temperature, the compressor will actually slow down. The advantages with the inverter system are power savings, because you're getting a unit that will actually ramp down. You're getting a compressor that will start softly. You're getting condenser fans that also have inverter drives in them that start softly and gradually ramp their way up. Inverter units won't dim your lights and that sort of thing if you have power problems like the old standard cycling units used to. They would be the main advantage with an inverter. Some of the disadvantages would be ease of fixing. They can be quite difficult to fix and diagnose. As you see, there is a number of PC boards in these, and they're really quite complicated to fix. Generally speaking, a lot of the time the technicians need to call tech support to get information to actually diagnose these properly. And inverters have had a long history with vermin strike, like frogs and geckos getting into them and shorting out the PC boards. One disadvantage that I see too is the shell itself is actually made of mild powder coated steel with no extra corrosion protection on either the unit or the fins on the back, and they can be quite susceptible to corrosion if put into a corrosive environment, like say in front of salt air or wet conditions. So that's our inverter. Secondly, we have our standard cycling unit. Now, standard cycling units are pretty much the way air conditioning has been for the last 50 years. It's basically a compressor that has two speeds, 100% or stop. The way it works is the thermostat says I need cooling or heating, compressor starts, runs at 100% till the thermostat's fine, and then the thermostat tells the compressor to stop. It does this via a contactor, and nowadays most of the boards have most of the units have a PC board that talks to the electronic controller inside. The advantages of a standard cycling unit are, for one, they use simple switching, which is a contactor. Now I can buy a contactor any one of the local suppliers off the shelf. Doesn't have to be from this manufacturer, any contactor off the shelf will do. One of the advantages of these units, which this is a temper zone unit, one of the big advantages with a temper zone is that they use the same PC board for most of their units, so we can actually keep one on the shelf. They're a very reliable board. and I can't really recall vermin ever being a problem with these sort of things, but if they are, look, we keep them on the shelf. One size fits all, so to speak. Same with, they have control circuits built into them to protect the indoor unit and comply with Australian standards, whereas the Japanese units, that's an extra that we have to put on. The shell of a temper zone unit is pretty much the best you'll get as far as corrosion protection is concerned. You'll see that the screws that temper zone unit put their units together with are stainless steel. You'll see that on their units, they will bite into nylon bushes so that we're not getting metal on metal contact. The shell itself is galvanised and powder coated, so that even if corrosion did make its way through the powder coating, it hits a zinc protective layer over the steel. So what you're getting is a unit that isn't going to rust away. And the fins on the temper zone unit are also epoxy coated, so the aluminium won't powderise in a corrosive environment as well. Another big advantage is also your compressor is a standard Copeland compressor, which I can buy overnight from any of the local wholesalers, which up in North Queensland, freight can be a bit of a killer. If any of our Japanese manufacturers, all the parts have to come from them, which can take time if they have or haven't got them on the shelf. Next, moving along, we go to our digital scroll model. Which again, this is a digital scroll made by Temper Zone. As you can see, like with all Temper Zone units, you've got your galvanised shell, everything on it's galvanised, epoxy coated fins. The main difference with this particular unit is that it's a digital scroll, which means it has a modulating compressor. Now, the idea behind the digital scroll is very similar in its capacity to that of an inverter. The idea is that the compressor itself will actually pump out as much capacity as what the room needs. So as the room comes down in temperature, the compressor does less and less work. That's the idea. They just do it in two different ways to the inverter. The inverter, it plays around with the power supply to speed up or slow down. With the digital scrolls, what happens is they have a solenoid valve which will, when it's open, it stops the compressor from pumping. When it's closed, it will make sure that the compressor pumps. So you've got this pumping, non-pumping type scenario, or loading and unloading as they call it. And this is done via a Siemens controller which talks to a small board and tells it how many cycles per minute to pump gas. Now, the big advantages with digital scrolls are that the compressors I can source from local suppliers. With the Temper Zone unit, you'll see again the same board that was in this unit is here. They have contactors that start and stop the unit, which is very simple. You'll see that again, they've got control circuits and everything built into them to meet Australian standards. These guys, Temper Zone, use Siemens as part of their, to work out the algorithm of how many times per minute the unit needs to come on. Siemens are extremely reliable and famous for controls, and they're very easy to get hold of. And like I was saying with the standard cycling unit, contactors are an off-the-shelf item. You don't have to buy one from Temper Zone or anything like that down the track. And basically it's quite simple wiring. All it's doing in effect is opening and closing a solenoid valve. That's the difference between this one and that one. So it's really quite simple. The disadvantages with digital scroll and with standard cycling is that compressors, when they start fully loaded. They run at 100%, straight off the bat, whereas an inverter will slowly speed up. But these guys put soft starters and things in their units to make sure that your lights don't dim as much as what they could. Generally speaking, in suburbia that won't matter, all the power supplies are good, but sometimes in rural situations and the power supply is not so great, you can get lights and things like that dimming. But they also claim to be up to 30% cheaper to run, like your inverters. However, it's always been my practice that that is not the case. They may be up to 30% cheaper to run, however, that's like turning your unit, it'll be 30% cheaper to run if you're going to turn your unit on say a 25-degree day when you should be opening a window. Yes, they will be 30% cheaper to run than that unit there. However, under full load, this will use as much power as what that will, or the inverter. So a lot of these things are marketed quite well, but in actual fact, you wouldn't see a great deal of power difference between this and that on a power bill if you use your air conditioning responsibly. And last but not least, this is another digital scroll unit of this is another one of our manufacturers, Actron Air. These guys also do a digital scroll, and I guess it's just showing a different shape of unit. Actron units butt hard up against the wall, suck their air in from the front and blow it out the top, which is very handy in many situations. You don't get leaves and things like that caught up around the back. Again, you've got galvanised powder coated shell, so these things are really made to last. As you can see, Copeland digital scroll compressor. Actually, it's virtually identical to that of the Temperzone unit, and like with Temperzone units, Actron have generic boards that fire up all their units. They don't have Japanese units. Each unit has its own unique boards, and you can't steal one from another and vice versa. Actron and Temperzone keep it simple so that we can actually keep these on the shelf. If one happened to die, I keep these in the service guy's truck. They can just pull one out, change it, you're back in business in a very short time. Again, this is the loading and unloading solenoid valve on the Temperzone unit. The logic, they have a soft starter to stop your lights from dimming. Logic's in the board. The controller inside will tell the board at what algorithm to run the compressor at, and it will cycle on and off so many times per minute, which will give you the capacity that you require inside. The advantages, I guess, with one of these are you can actually put these very close to a fence because they're sucking their air in the front, blowing it out the top. So depending on what your situations are, would depend on whether we sort of recommended Actron, Temperzone. In our opinion, they are both very good units. The other thing that Actron do actually sell that goes hand in hand with their digital scroll models is the variable air fan on their indoor unit. That's on their ESP and their Ultima range, but that will have to be for another day to explain how that works. So, I hope this has been helpful and look forward to talking to you soon.